just add to that, when we talk about like the mental health and how that may happen, I mean, there's a variety of ways that mental health can impact an individual, or maybe they, establish a mental health concern, whether it's hereditary or it's through ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. And so when someone has an adverse or a traumatizing upbringing, that leads to a whole host of societal problems if that person goes untreated, if they're not supported, whether that's a family member who's hooked on drugs, or maybe they witnessed some violence, or maybe they aren't properly sheltered or housed, or whatever the case may be. And so really got to think beyond just the more prominent mental health uh, stereotypes of like schizophrenia or things of that nature, but just really trauma, right?
Hmm.
And someone, dealing with trust issues. And I also say that to say, when we talk about mentoring and supporting people, one of the biggest things that I'm really concerned about, which is why Black Dad brand exists, is to uplift Black fathers so their families can thrive, um, but specifically to deal with the social determinants of health, right? And when we think about the five social determinants of health, that's economic stability, education access and quality, healthcare access and quality, neighborhood and built-in environment, and social community context. And so those elements really determine your quality of life. Social determinants of health is a big fancy term that encompasses all the elements that determines your quality of life, your length of life. And so I encourage our audience to dig into that topic, look up ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and then also look up social determinants of health, so you have a better understanding of how these things may impact, or may be impacting you. You may not even know that you had adverse childhood experiences. You may not even know that you're disproportionately affected by one of these five areas of social determinants of health. And as we talked about before, and I know not everybody's going to go to college, but when we, as you were saying, when you see your brother who's graduating from college, it kind of gives you a certain feeling. And a good part of that is that, having access to education opens up opportunity, right? And so one of the biggest determinants of your life expectancy is and your health outcomes is how much education you have, right? And so to the extent that we see a brother overcoming one of those barriers, one of those
Right.
big bucket barriers, it's like, oh, okay,
Hmm.
bro, cool. You know, in theory, you're safe, or in theory, you
Right.
have
You're on your way.
you're on your way. You know what I mean? All right, now I'm just gonna knock out that economic stability, because we always tie in the education to the economic opportunities. And so to the extent that you can do those things, I think about so often so many people who don't have access to healthcare in America, right? We primarily get it through our jobs. And if you live in some of the, southern states, or you're in a poor area, or you don't have that type of access, you may have a reduced access to some of the healthcare items. So again, I think what Andre is doing here is illustrating the need and the importance of having people to invest in your life so that you can have a greater quality of life,
Right.
and that you know the folks around you can have a greater quality of life. Because one thing I do know about Black folks, we're communal individuals, right? And
Hmm.
we always think about the next brother, the next sister, the next person in our family. And so when we see something going wrong with one, it's almost like we take on that third party trauma of feeling like, damn, we lost one. You know what I mean? Or damn, it would be so much better if somebody could help that brother, reach that brother. So um, to that extent, you know, there's not enough soldiers to handle all of the the young people in our communities that we need to support, and also just the peers. I'm very fortunate to have, you know we've been best friends for over 20 years, 23 years. And so to be able to look to my left or to my right and see you doing the things that you've accomplished in life does provide that inspiration, that information, that those resources. And so when we think about mentorship, don't think about it as just, someone younger than you or whatever, but it could be the person right next to you holding you accountable. And that's one of the things that, I call you my little big brother because you're older than me, but it has been a great relationship. And for those who are only seeing us on the screen, I'm 6'4", he's 5'9". So there's there's a huge disparity there. But I'm gonna jump to the next slide here because I think it's, like I said, it was so important to discuss that element of like why
Right.
it's so important for us to care about each other.
Right. And I'm going to flash through this one pretty quickly because just for the sake of time, I know it's late on your side, but this slide is really important to me because I was able to participate as a young child in the Paul Robeson Institute for Positive Self-Development back in Boston, Massachusetts. It was put on by a program that's called the Concerned Black Men of Massachusetts. It was, what's the word I'm looking for? It was ran and facilitated by the dean, one of the deans of the schools at Northeastern University, which is right there in the heart of Boston. And so every Saturday morning from like 8 o'clock to maybe like 12:30, 1 o'clock, you would have these black men come out, take these school age kids. They would literally bus many of us to the university. So one, you have exposure to what the college life looks like. You're on a campus where you're this fifth, sixth grader looking at these towering individuals with backpacks on. And we're taking math classes, we're taking science classes, and we're finding ourselves in a position where, again, the exposure matters. But they had these principles that just meant so much to us, and we had to repeat them, we had to know them. We were being motivated by these. I don't know. Can you hear? I hear
I
ringing.
hear
So we were indoctrinated with these principles here. And so, again, Umoja, unity, Kuji Shakalia, self-determination, Ujima, collective work and responsibilities, Ujama, cooperative economics, Nia, purpose, Kumba, creativity, Imani, faith. These are and again, very Afrocentric. And they were mentoring us every other Saturday since I was in 4th grade till I was in 10th grade.
Mm.
And so I have these men in this program, again, very formal, pouring into young black men to have them pretty much create this wave of leaders. And not always leaders in the sense of I'm always the first to do something, but leading either current initiatives that are going on in our community. So community service was huge for us. Like it was mandatory as part of the program. You could not participate if you weren't going to, clock in at least 5 to 10 hours a month at the younger age, and then higher hours once you get older, and that's what they track to determine, are you about what we're about? Are you going to serve the community? Are you going to feed the homeless? Are you going to go to the prisons? And probably one of the, I would say, most intimidating experiences I had as a child was going to a facility. It wasn't a jail, but it was like a corrective facility where it was almost like, the years of Scared Straight, right? They were like, hey, as part of this mentorship program, we're trying to show you what life we would like you to lead. But we also want to show you if you make maybe not the greatest decisions based upon your economic opportunities and resources, where you could end up. But they didn't stop the story there. They said, we're not looking at prison as, okay, this is a catch-all for people who made bad decisions and you just leave them there. No, we're also letting you know that our outreach is for those that are shut in as well. So you go into these facilities and you're looking at, okay, we're not looking at murders or anything of a major crime perspective, but you're at a corrective facility looking at someone through a pane glass saying, hi, my name is Andre, and I'm a 6th grader at XYZ middle school, and I created this art and craft for you. And just merely that interactive, like you're talking about people who probably don't have anyone to ever come see them. And then you have this busload of kids get off that you don't know, and their job is to come to encourage you, given the current position that you're in. So this program was really adamant about that, again, that communal responsibility, that civic engagement. They utilize resources like that to say, how many young men want to be lawyers here? Oh, I want to be a lawyer. How many want to be judges? I want to be judges. How many want to be a cop or a detective? Yeah. Okay, so those roles and responsibilities that you're looking for, they are also the individuals that serve the community as well as handle situations where individuals who may not make the greatest decisions have to interact with. You interact with the police when you're dealing with domestic situations. You're dealing with attorneys when you have to go to arraignment. You're dealing with judges when you're having to go to sentencing or having to deal with, mitigating situations where maybe jail or fines aren't your outcome, but community service is. So this program did stuff like that. They also looked at athletics. How many people want to go to D1? Back then, everybody wanted to be an NBA player.
Mhm.
I wanted to, but I figured I'd let that be somebody else's ministry, and I'll go ahead and do something else, right? So, I lived
Yeah.
vicariously through Jamil as he traveled the world, and I sat back and tried to make money. But it's one of those things where, again, they looked at
Focus
it from
on that he's
academics,
currently in
they
Japan
look at
right
it from the
now.
social emotional aspect. They had counselors there to talk to young kids, and I love how you just said ASICs, because I just learned that term 18 months ago, because I've been challenged at certain parts of my parenting, which I realize is a derivative of my experiences. So I have to be very cognitive, and it is a huge muscle movement. It is going against my parental default settings to say, I won't do this with my kid because this happened to me. Or I'm going to be very intentional to pour this into my child because I realize I've only got a little bit of that from my experience. So this program, again, I have the link at the end, is the Paul Robeson Institute for Positive Self Development, put on by the Concerned Black Men of Massachusetts. It was awesome, still goes on to this day. But again, some of the things that we're looking at here to the right, of all these bullet points here, the one that I think speaks the most to me, or the two rather, is reduce psychological and behavioral risky activities. Again, combating the war on drugs, the prison industrial complex, all of the structural things that put us at a disadvantage. This is trying to course correct that. And then lastly, I would say, celebrating one's strength and resilience. And I look at that from now as a parent of, I say 4 kids because my niece is I consider her a daughter of mine. 4 kids. I have to teach them as a black man, one, what it is to be black, not only in America, but in the world, because we live internationally, right? And so there's beauty behind our melanin. There is strength in our story. And the strength comes because we are resilient people. Everyone in the world knows the history of black people in the United States. And sometimes they take their cues and clues from how they should treat us based upon that singular narrative. So as a father, I tell my children living in Japan, black is beautiful. People around here who are not of your melanated magic, they look at you like a mythical creature. I have small Japanese kids look at me as I'm saying "Ohayo gozaimasu," good morning, or "Arigato gozaimasu," all those things, and they're looking at me like, "Wow, this is an anomaly." And I said, but there's also challenges that you'll face internationally and globally that won't mirror what you experience in the States, but it's going to be unique on its own, and you need to be resilient in getting over that. Whether it's the language barrier, or whether it be the cultural differences in how you approach people, how do you talk, how do you interact. And I said, these are the things that, as a black man, I am charged with teaching my black kids. And I would love to say I get it right all the time. I don't. I probably missed the mark more than I actually hit it. But I think it's when I reflect back at the mentors that I had and celebrate the ones that I have currently. And I have a host of mentors right now. They are my executive advisory board. That's what I call
Yeah.
them, because they're the ones where, if I'm trying to figure out how to be a better father, if I'm struggling with ways to be a more compassionate, loving, and emotionally engaged spouse, if I'm looking at entrepreneurial endeavors, if I'm looking at ways to live a healthier lifestyle before my children, before my family, how do I do all that? I am resorting back to that fifth grader that was in a formal program, and I recreate that in my life. And I say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm looking to seek after. And I'm not going to burn too many emotional brain cells trying to figure it out on my own when there are people who have lived the life that I'm looking to mimic, and they have nuggets of knowledge to pass and game to share with me. So again, it's programs like this that I think, and they exist all throughout the country and the world. It's just you got to find them out, and you have to pursue them with all veracity. We can go to the next slide here. I just have what I call the Boys to Men Pledge. This came out of that Paul Robeson Institute for Positive Self Development. We recited this every single time we got together. And I won't have to go through it here, but I'll just leave it for the viewers to kind of look at. But this was the mantra. This is what, as a young fourth and fifth grader, all the way to a graduating senior, you're indoctrinated with. I am the black man. I am the original man. I will strive to love my brothers and my sisters as I love myself. So just recognizing the importance of who you are, why you're here, I will strive to study to improve myself spiritually, mentally, morally, physically, and economically. You're setting out a decree to saying, this is what I'm going to accomplish. And the mentorship helps you go after that with all
Yeah.
available resources and all opportunity that are laid before you. This is what you're looking to achieve. I will stay committed to my God, myself, and my people and my family. Again, there's that call to action that this is a lot more than just you doing you. There's so much more to this life that you will have to contribute to beyond your own selfish desires. But it does start with the initiative within oneself to say, I recognize my importance. I understand the goal and objective. I have the desire and the willingness to do this with the guided, trusted, and experienced mentorship that comes with that. And as a result, I will be in this constant refining process of improvement. And it may not always be perfect, but as the phrasing goes that I see in here a lot, a win is a win. A
Mm-hmm.
win is a win. So that win means that I am pursuing my educational dreams. I'm seeking out scholarships. If the win is I'm going to humble myself and actually go to therapy and do it as a consistent practice, so that way it's not an insurance policy on my inability to make wise decisions, but it's going to be more so, this is going to be so much of what I do that it becomes muscle memory.
Yeah.
I talk to my counselor every week and a half. I share with him how many times I feel like I have missed a mark, but I also celebrate the fact that yet and still, with all what is perceived to be the failures, I am still here. So my assignment is not finished yet. And from that, I have more motivation to move forward. So hopefully that is what mentorship would look like and be for those that are actively involved in that experience. So then going to just the last slide here,
Well, before
one
we
of
go to the last slide, let me just for Dre, let
the
me
administration was, or prior to now, when we had Barack Obama as our first African American president. Oh, sorry,
can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me at all?
No.
All right, just keep going.
Okay. So yeah, so as we look at the My Brother's Keeper initiative, now I can't think, and maybe Jamil, you can chime in or you can provide the viewer some insight on this, but I can't think of any presidential administration that focus on African Americans, African American men, as laser focused as President Obama has with this initiative here. Again, this is something that is obviously on the larger stage. He has a lot of notoriety, a lot of celebrity pull to him, but it goes to show that, again, our former president, who also came from a single parent home, who's also openly admitted, that there's been some
Yeah.
challenges not having that male figure in the house. He's also talked about his mentorships that he has had over the course of his professional and political careers, that now on the other side of his presidential experience, he's decided to focus his energies on something. Could be so many other things, but one that is near and dear to his heart is My Brother's Keeper. And to me, that is the epitome of mentorship amongst Black men. I'm my brother's keeper. I'm not my brother's codependent. I'm not my brother's enabler. I'm not my brother's whatever other adjective you want to throw in. It's like, no, I am my brother's keeper. And that word keeper can be so symbolic of so many different things. But I think for what I've experienced, what I've seen in action, and what I hope I am conveying to the people that I mentor is that keeper means that I'm establishing that healthy environment to where vulnerability can be expressed, but more so there's an evolving, growing, swelling need to just be a better version of ourselves. And that's both ways. Like I learned from my mentees as well. And so I think that is something that should be celebrated. That's something that should be always at the forefront of our mind, that at the end of the day, it is for the purpose of galvanizing and cultivating someone else. It's an outward, it's almost like apostolic ministry. You're going out to do something for the better. Um, and so, with that, the last slide here, there's some resources and links that I provided. There's some really great articles out there. I know Boston University has a really good program and some studies happening there. George Mason. I mean, you can just literally Google Black men and mentorship, and there are a swath of opportunities out there. And even locally in the Sacramento area, they have a My Brother's Keeper program as well. And it's one where if you go on the website, they have workshops, seminars. So just in our local area, there are movements to address this very particular topic that we've been discussing today. And so with that, again, it's always a pleasure. It's always an honor. And I enjoy, having this stage to share with my brother from another mother, Jamil, because this is something where it's normally a conversation that happens in the intimate settings of friends over the course of drinks and fellowships and other conversations. But to see it now elevated at a platform to where it's shared on a more broader scale, man, it's just a beautiful thing to see. So again, I appreciate the time that you all have taken to listen to Jamil and I kind of go back and forth. And I look forward to the very soon opportunity to talk about some other topics that we are passionate about and thrilled to share our experiences with as well. So Jamil, back to you, sir.
Dre, thank you for that amazing presentation. I think the topic of mentorship is so important, especially to our community. I think it's not just, like you said, a top down thing, but a peer to peer type of component too. And it's so important. You may not think, how does this relate to being a dad? Well, it's constantly, filling up your cups that you have more to spill over into your children. And so finding other ways in which you can be developed as an individual is supremely important. And I wanted to kind of go back as we were talking about earlier in the podcast, and I asked you, what is the major lesson that you learned from mentorship? And as I said before, this is such an incredible subject for me because as a person who didn't grow up with their father, I felt like I had such amazing Black men who poured into me in a variety of ways. And throughout this Black Dad Brand podcast, I'll talk about the different men who poured into me, Black men who poured into me to help me to be where I am today. And, they played a variety of roles, but uh, probably the biggest mentor that I've had, his name is Jonathan. And he decided to work with me when I was about 12 years old. And, having had some difficulties, I would say, growing up as a kid in terms of behavior, attitude, academics. Had a 1.3 GPA in middle school. That's pretty much a D in every class except for PE, right? And so being suspended multiple times, being out of control in the classroom, and really having an athlete identity in terms of just thinking of myself as a ball player and that was it and everything else was secondary. And the lesson that he really imparted into me, or the benefit, was that he got me to see something different in the mirror. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a young person who only cared about making it to the NBA, only cared about playing ball, wasn't really, and at that time wasn't even putting in the work it took to be at that elite level of basketball. But when he got me to see myself as a scholar, as a contributing member of society, as a potential Division I and professional athlete, but so much more than the readily available stereotypes that are available for Black men to buy into, everything just kind of changed in my life. And so when I think about mentoring young people or mentoring my peers or whomever's willing to listen to me, one of my biggest goals, my singular purpose, is to improve their self efficacy, which means their belief in themselves to accomplish the goals that they set for themselves, right? Speaking life into someone, telling them that they can be more than what they've seen or experienced in life, and exposing them and saying, this is possible for you if you do the things that it takes to get there. And so for me, man, sometimes it sounds a bit overwhelming for people to hear when I tell them, like, hey, I see this in you, right? And it's like, when someone says that, it's like, oh, now am I held accountable to being that?
Right.
I'm a little scared. But it's I think back to all the mentors who shaped me. Another one of my Godfather mentors, Crandall Rankins, man. I remember he would take me to a park and say, hey, look, man, you see these two paths? It's kind of like life, you know? What this one leads down to a darker, you know, pathway, where this one, it's a little bit more lit and a little bit more, positive. So he would do so many things to just pour into me and say, Jamil, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this. And at some point, when I heard Les Brown say, who's one of my digital mentors, or listen to all his speeches all the
Yes.
time, it says, sometimes you got to believe in the people's belief in you until
Yeah.
your belief in yourself kicks in. And so really tapping into that inspiration and self-efficacy, man, because when you get that feeling of being invincible, that you can really do these things, and if things are obtainable to you, your behaviors match that and mirror that. So
Absolutely.
I'm all about mentorship, and to this day, I do my part. I used to work as a college and career counselor for a high school for over 5 years, and I really just wa- was captured by the moments where the kids would come to me like, man, I got into this school, I got into that school, got into that school. And to see that level of happiness in them, right? First kid in school history to get into to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Columbia, right? I'm talking about black kids, right, who I worked with. And that was fulfilling for me, right? So 3 years removed from working in the schools, I continue to provide that service to young people, to young kids of color, because I think it's important for them to understand the process and what it takes to get accepted to these schools, whether it's UC Berkeley, UCLA, USC, like I said, Harvard, Yale, all of them. And so but again, college is not the goal. That's just part of the process, right?
Right.
The goal is to get to a point where you can thrive in life and have a way of providing for yourself that uplifts you and makes you happy every day, and not necessarily drag you down because you're just working hard to survive and to get by, right? And so,
Mhm.
our previous generations have gone through that. At this point, we should be standing on their shoulders and not standing next to them, right? And so,
Right.
to the extent that we can learn from those lessons and apply them, right? Because that's the biggest thing. Like, so what if you know these things? Can you apply them?
Mhm.
So that's really big for me. And so, mentorship is an incredible topic for me. I absolutely love it. I appreciate all that you share with the audience today. Dre will be back. We
Yes.
will continue to learn from his wisdom and go deeper into these different topics. If you haven't watched the podcast that he and I did on home ownership, make sure and go and find that one too. So thanks for being with us. Again, follow us on social media. Check out our website at Black Dad Brand. We'll see you in the next episode. We appreciate you all. And again, remember, it's all about uplifting you so that your families can thrive. Take care.
Absolutely.